Now we have Representative Aragona to speak to his resolution, and he's got some guests.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I appreciate your time, committee. I appreciate your time as well to take up this resolution on a very important topic. The bill you just talked about, the Representative Arbit, our colleague, introduced, incredibly important, and I think there's some very important testimony there regarding that there is a large diaspora of the Chaldean and Assyriac community here in Michigan, and especially in the southeast portion of our state. One of the people testifying also mentioned that there is discrimination that happens against these people, and especially in Iraq. And it is a tragedy that it happens. But the Chaldean and Assyrian people are a strong people, they are a proud people, and they persevere. However, this resolution speaks to a certain tragedy that happened back in September. There was a wedding, which is an incredibly large affair in that portion of the world, and there was a fire during this wedding where multiple people died. In fact, a portion of the people who died were buried at a mass funeral, 47 people. And I actually have some people here who will speak to what it looks like to sit through a funeral and to be there at a 47-person funeral. You also may wonder, well, that was in another part of the world, right? No. Again, there's a large diaspora here. Many of the family members, many people had family members who were affected, who were either burned, who passed away. There were American citizens who passed away. Many, if you look at the display behind me, those are many of the faces of people who died in this tragedy. And it has rocked the region, a region that does not have a lot of wealth, that needs medical supplies. Their friends and family here have raised a lot of money for that, but there is still much needed, whether physical, medical supplies or mental health services are needed there. And that's what this resolution is urging our federal government to help with and to provide. So first of all, I have a couple of people here to testify. The first is Alex Karana, and he is going to start the testimony to kind of give you a picture of what happened and who the Chaldean and Assyrian people are and how it's affecting them today.
First, good afternoon, representatives, chair in this committee. Thank you for your time today. As you're aware, our Chaldean Assyrian Syriac communities have strong ties here to Michigan. And Michigan has been a sanctuary of refuge for the Chaldean Assyrian Syriac communities every year since the 70s due to endless conflicts in Iraq. And as you heard, a new study completed by Walsh College shows that Chaldean Americans in Metro Detroit contributed $17.6 billion last year to the Michigan economy. This state has one of the largest populations of Chaldean Assyrian Syriac people in the entire world, estimated to be around 187,000. Many Chaldean Assyrian Syriac people from our community here in Michigan have served in the United States military, either in official capacity or as contractors, primarily serving with intelligence communities like the CIA during the Iraq War for interrogations when translations were required. Michigan has been an incredible home to us, and today we're asking you here for help. Today, Bakhdeda, also called Qaraqosh or Hamdaniya, is an extremely important town in Iraq. 15% of all the indigenous minority Iraqi Christians live in Bakhdeda. These are the Chaldeans, Assyrians, and Syriacs. Not only has the United States invested tens of millions of dollars rehabilitating it post-ISIS, but our small community, nonprofits, and other nations have also heavily invested in this town. They have come a long way, having the largest return rate post-ISIS, until tragedy rattled the entire town to its core yet again. And on September 26, 2023, a wedding hall of nearly 1,000 guests was burned to the ground. The fire received widespread international news coverage, but sparse international aid. It was reported by the BBC, the New York Times, Al Jazeera, CNN, Associated Press, Catholic News Agency, Reuters, Washington Post, NBC, Jerusalem Post, The Guardian, and even TMZ. Yet, there was never any aid provided. Our local community organizations were only able to support urgent medical needs at the time of the fire with burn medications and other medical supplies, but much more help is needed. Help from this committee urging Congress to appropriate funds to provide medical aid is extremely important and is greatly appreciated. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Next, we'll have Chris Salem, who is the head of an organization called Nineveh Rising, who has helped raise funds for this. Chris?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for listening and for considering this resolution. We're going to describe what happened that day. So a fire sparkler set the ceiling on fire. The owner cut the electricity off, the building went dark, and flames consumed the entire building within minutes. In a pitch black and rapidly spreading fire, little kids and the elderly had no chance. 132 people died, and hundreds more were disfigured with permanent scars and injuries. The people who died didn't die a normal death. They all suffocated from smoke and burned alive in pitch black darkness, where many tripped and fell over each other in total fear trying to escape. Every single one of us knows what it's like to get burned by something, whether it's hot soup, a sunburn, embers sparking from a bonfire, etc. We've all experienced low-level burns like that, and it hurts. Now imagine high-level burns, unrelenting and excruciatingly painful across every single inch of your body. And right next to you are your parents, kids, siblings, and your entire extended family going through the same exact torture. We understand this is difficult to listen to, but just imagine how difficult it is to actually go through it. And that's why we owe it to them to share their story, no matter how challenging their details are. We were in Iraq at the time and had firsthand experience during the aftermath of this tragedy. We were one town over with a group of 21 Americans. We were sightseeing, traveling the country, and reconnecting with our roots, some of us for the very first time. We had an incredible time visiting the country, seeing sites that are thousands of years old. When this tragedy struck, our group shifted gears from tourism to activism, immediately responding with medical aid to several different hospitals. We cleaned out several pharmacies and delivered as much burn cream as we could. The day after the fire, we went into the town, Bakhdeda. We went to the site of the tragedy at the wedding hall and also the local hospital. Then we attended the largest funeral any of us have ever seen. Most, if not all of us in this room have been to a funeral for one person, and any funeral is difficult. Relatives are sad, family members contemplate their futures without a loved one, and sometimes it gets hysterical. Now, multiply that by 47 in the blazing hot conditions of a war-torn country like Iraq. We attended a funeral for 47 people, 47 in one day. 47 caskets were carried one by one, surrounded by 47 different families. 47 names were read aloud, and 47 burials were performed. And since this was a wedding, everyone in attendance was either a relative, friend, and neighbor. Again, it's hard enough to grieve just one loss, but imagine 47. We saw it all. Eventually, 47 burials turned into 132 over the next few days. Families held up photos of their dead children. So many people were mourning. A few ladies collapsed. I remember just how hot it was outside and how agonizing the cries were for their dead children. People frantically distributed water to prevent people from dehydrating and fainting in the midst of all this grief. I personally witnessed a woman beside me who fainted. It seemed as if nobody could comfort anyone because everyone needed comforting. Again, the 47 burials were just on the first day after the fire. 85 others would later be buried. Our organization turned to the leaders of the town to see if there was anything we could do, but the mayor himself lost 11 family members. All we could do is give medicine as quickly as possible based on what we could afford. And all this just happened a little over 4 months ago. The wounds are still open, literally and psychologically. The pain is great, and many express feeling numbness, especially those who face losses due to ISIS 10 years ago. And we just want them to know that we acknowledge their pain and that we're here to help.
Thanks, Chris. Another member of the organization, Joe Arabbo, is going to give a short testimony at this point. Joe?
Thank you all representatives for your time and the opportunity to address you regarding this very important matter. After nearly 7,000 years of living in Mesopotamia, we represent the first generation in our families who are born in America. Without a doubt, this country is the greatest in the world. But our parents didn't come here just for its greatness. They came here because they had no choice. We were hunted down in our own indigenous lands, and there are only a few million of us left in the world. So we are trying to resist extinction. That's why we created Nineveh Rising, a nonprofit dedicated to preventing exactly that. We trace our roots to antiquity with the origin of the wheel, the rule of law, and the concept of civilization itself. Our land is the land of kings and saints, the birthplace of Abraham, and the resting place of prophets like Jonah, Nahum, Daniel from the lion's den, and dozens of others. The extinction of our people would silence stories, lessons, and perspectives that are irreplaceable. We have a lot of needs in our ancestral land, most notably security and economic opportunity. Our people are financially disadvantaged and unsafe. During rare times of peace, the best that the Chaldean Assyrian and Syriac community can expect is Jim Crow treatment. There aren't necessarily separate bathrooms and drinking fountains, but when you drive down the street and to the grocery store and pass through checkpoints, you must identify yourself by your religion. And if you're Chaldean, Assyrian, Syriac, Yazidi, or Mandaean, or other religious minorities in Iraq, your odds of getting pulled over at a checkpoint and being harassed are much higher. It's been this way for at least 1,400 years, and somehow we're still here, hanging on by a thread. But if we don't take action now, the only way you'll see people like us in 3 or 4 generations will be at a museum. Two American citizens died, one from Michigan and another from Arizona. His father, Haitham Behnam, is here today, and his testimony will be later read after the close of these statements by Joe Tinpan. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Joe. And to finish up the testimony from Nineveh Rising is Chris's wife, Ranna Salem.
Thank you, committee, for listening to us today. Every single person in Bakhdeda was impacted by this tragedy. While no amount of funding will ever replace the lives lost, there is a great deal we can do for the healing process. We recently received blueprints for a much-needed mental health facility. Counselors in the town have been operating out of makeshift therapy centers since the start of ISIS recovery. We are also partners with another nonprofit that conducts many youth activities for mental health that could also benefit from recreational facilities. There were many children lost in the fire, and there were children who lost one or both parents. We discussed the possibility with the mayor of the town of starting a daycare center, and there are also still people with burn injuries who need medical aid. Last but not least, the town needs emergency preparedness programs at schools, hospitals, and other community places. If we don't address these challenges, it will be the final nail in our collective coffin of extinction. Not only that, but it will be a significant blow to the United States national security. Bakhdeda is home to 35,000. Competing interests have pushed for demographic change in this town since the fall of ISIS. In short, even U.S. national security implications are substantial. We want to emphasize to all of you, from the left side of the political spectrum to the right, along with everyone in between, that this is not a political issue, but a humanitarian one. The Chaldean Assyrian Syriac societies there and the one and here are very closely linked. Why else would we go to a place like Iraq? There is an obvious link between our community here and there. So passing this resolution would help Chaldean Americans who are all very connected to our relatives in Iraq. Thank you so much for taking the time to review this resolution, and it would certainly mean a lot if you could decide to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranna. That concludes the testimony from Nineveh Rising. If you look over my right shoulder in the second row, there is a couple, the Behnams. Haitham, the gentleman, prepared a short statement. He does not speak English very well. My friend Joe Tinpan will read his short statement. His son was one of the victims of this tragedy.
Thank you all for allowing us to speak here in front of you today. My son, Istvan Haitham Buttress, a United States citizen, traveled to Iraq to marry the love of his life. Istvan and his wife, Adra, wed on July 25th. 2 months post-wedding, Istvan aimed to attend my cousin's wedding in Iraq with Adra before returning to America. He initiated the necessary paperwork in Iraq to bring her to the U.S., aspiring for the life they both envisioned. Tragically, on September 26th, a fire broke out at the wedding that they were attending, causing numerous injuries and fatalities. Istvan safely exited, but re-entered upon realizing Adra was still stuck inside. He managed to save her, despite her sustaining burns, but suffered extensive second and third degree burns himself, leading to his death after a month-long hospital battle. We fulfilled Istvan's wish to be buried in the U.S., albeit without his wife, Adra. Profoundly affected by the tragedy and Istvan's loss Adra, profoundly affected by the tragedy and Istvan's loss, is battling severe mental health issues. Despite efforts to obtain a visa for her to visit Istvan's grave, the embassy's denial on January 10, 2024 has left us feeling hopeless. We earnestly seek assistance to bring his widow to visit her dead husband's final resting place.
If there are any questions from the committee, we can take them at this time.
Representative Green?
Yes, thank you. I am so sorry that all of you have gone through this. This is such a horrible tragedy. Have you contacted our state senators, like Senator Stabenow, Senator Peters, or any of the 13 Congress members of our Congress in Michigan State?
Do you want to take that?
No, we haven't made contact with the representatives. Our senators.
The senators or the representatives?
The goal of this resolution is to speak not just with their voice, not just with my voice, but the voice of the entire House of Representatives to say that this is a tragedy and this needs to happen. We have been in contact with some of the Congress people within the local area, so they are becoming aware of it at this point. But part of what we'd like to do with this resolution is to speak with 110 voices that are the House of Representatives to say that this is an important thing that we need to accomplish, that people are in need in Iraq, and they are American citizens.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you all for your testimony.
Thank you.
I have a couple cards to read in support of House Resolution 148. Not wishing to speak, Yusuf Atu, Bakhdida Federation. Joseph Kayat, also from the Bakhdida Federation. Nazreen Makaya, victims of the Baghdadi fire. Mika, victims of the fire. And David and Yai, Sunnyview, also victims of that. Now I need a motion to adopt with substitute. I need a motion to report House Resolution 148 as substituted. Representative McFall makes that recommendation. Clerk, will you take the vote?
On the motion to report, Chair Liberati.
Yes.
Representatives Kutsky. Yes. McFall.
Yes.
Posthumous.
Pass.
Green.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 4 yeas, 0 nays, 1 pass. House Resolution 148 is reported with recommendation as substitute H1.
No further business, no absent members. The committee is adjourned. What's that? No, he's.